add technology or artificial intelligence, what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, I feel like you have a way of helping whoever you're talking to say something meaningful. So however it is that you're like crafting your questions, I always walk away thinking, wow, like that, I actually had something to say. And sometimes when I go into it.
But you're really starting with a zero audience. And so patience is key. Like I said, people will give up after probably 6 to 8 episodes. I think the data research shows that. Random fact about me, I have never been out of the country.
Okay.
Welcome to a very special episode of Transform Your Workplace. I've got Lacey Partipilo with me. Hey, Lacey.
Hello.
We are celebrating something special. 500 episodes of this podcast. Crazy.
It's awesome.
Did you ever think we would have got here?
No, I had no idea where this podcast would end up when we started it.
And it seems crazy to think like, okay, 500 episodes. That's a lot. I mean, we do about 50 to maybe 60 a year. So, I mean, think of all the years that we've been doing this. And you started with episode number 1 with me, and which is why I wanted to celebrate this big milestone with you, because we started out that very first episode, I think it was late 2012. And we talked about how to build an employee handbook. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I remember when you said, hey, I have this idea. What do you think about doing a podcast? And I wasn't even really listening to podcasts. I listened to crime podcast Serial before. Yeah. That was the only one that I had listened to. So I didn't really know anything about it. I mean, I'm up for trying new things all the time. So I was like, yeah, what do you want to talk about? And I think you were like, well, what's something you feel confident that you could talk to listeners about? And I was in the throes of, my HR role with clients. And I'm like, I think I could talk about handbook. And I would not want to go back and listen to that podcast now, probably. But I think at the time,
I refuse.
At the time, I feel like I felt proud of it and just, was doing something different, and definitely did not think that, you were going to have authors sending you books to read, and just, it has really taken off.
Yeah. I think back at that time, and it was fun because we're kind of newer in our career. I can't even remember how many years in. Maybe 4 years into my job, and I had different roles at Zenium in the past, but it was like, we got to try something different. And, we're an HR consulting payroll processing company, and it's like easy to get kind of hidden in the saturated market, the big players out in the market too. And I kind of felt like we needed to provide resources to HR people. And I think that was where this sort of stemmed from. Was I had happened to listen to a podcast called Econ Talk and another one that's real estate investing. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like author or interview, like guest interview type things. And it was like all educational. I was like, that was awesome. Like I got a lot of value out of that. I feel like I know something I didn't know before. I was like, I want to bring that to the HR industry, because I remember searching online. Maybe there's 1 or 2 HR podcasts at the time. And so that's why I think I brought it to you, and I was like, hey, what if we recorded this? And I think we recorded it even before I even told anybody else that like, I want to launch a podcast. It was more like, let's do it and then show people, and then maybe this will become a thing.
Yeah. So, and I don't think anybody at the time, even when they listened to it, thought that it would become this. I think back to even like the tech and stuff that we were using and how we were doing it, and we were like together in an office, and we couldn't do it this remote way. What were some of the challenges when you were first starting this that you had to overcome?
Basically nobody, I didn't have access to anybody who had done this before. So finding the right tech and the right way of doing this, I sort of just built it on my own. And I was doing end-to-end production. So it was like, I bought this blue snowball is what it was called. It was like this little white circular thing that can record, 1 person, 2 people, 360, like the room. And it was just $60 microphone. And it was terrible quality. And I remember like if you're trying to edit out background noise, it was really tough. And I'd used a free editing software called Audacity, which was great because I could just bootstrap this thing without spending a lot of money. But when I started getting remote interviews with people, like this is when like the authors started reaching out to me. It was a lot harder because the technology as it sits today didn't exist. Like Zoom and Riverside is where we're recording on now. It just didn't exist. And so I used Skype with I think I bought some third-party plugin for like $30. It'd break half the time. So I remember recording interviews remotely and the file wouldn't record. And so
couldn't
like,
even use it?
No, it would be corrupted.
Oh,
and so like, how do you reach out to somebody saying, hey, we need to re-record this, or like, sorry, like it was a really good interview, but it can't use it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the challenges. Now it's crazy. Like just the ability to record audio and video on all separate tracks. And now even AI now I can edit some of these instantaneously. I mean,
totally.
There's the ability now to transcribe and edit visually through text. It's amazing what we can do now.
Yeah. I feel like the quality of the content that you're putting out has changed. One of my favorite episodes that we did was we did a 3-person, you, me, and Tony. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
it was
of course in person. That was on compassion fatigue.
Yeah, on compassion fatigue. That was such a blast. And so like what I love about the podcast is it's so relatable to the clients that we're working with, but also I feel like to every leader, every HR practitioner, and to be able to be real with clients, which is sort of that's my style with the clients that I'm working with anyways. So it's fun to bring to life things that are like in the moment happening. I remember we did one too on, I think it was about when I-5 was getting worked on. Do you remember?
Oh yeah. We did a video on that.
That was
in-person video. That was tough.
That needs to be removed from the archives.
But yeah, because we thought it was going to be a lot more. We thought we were like breaking news or something, and maybe we were thinking we're going to get ahead of some big story, but it ended up being absolutely nothing.
It was a non-event, but that's okay. I feel like that's what's been cool is like we can be cutting edge when we need to be, but also things that are timeless that apply to, any business, no matter whether we recorded it 7 years ago or not, that it's meaningful.
Yeah, I think that's what I've tried to shape with this podcast is very rarely do I do current event related things like news because it's the shelf life of it. It doesn't last forever. And what I want to do is create evergreen content that people can consume, stuff from 7 years ago or last year or last week, like it doesn't get stale and will provide tips and ideas that will help you in your job right now. And honestly, like when we started that podcast, it was for HR people and we called it the HR for Small Business podcast. It was totally a marketing SEO, search engine optimization play. And it helped people discover the podcast, but the podcast was not all about HR. But when I started interviewing, people within Xenium, people like connected to Xenium, and then those that are authors and speakers who I'd never met before in my life, the topics became more about leadership and how to create a great workplace, which, has a lot to do with HR. So transform your workplace felt like the right type of title for the podcast and quite frankly, a mission and a vision for how we do things at Xenium. So it all aligned, and topics nowadays that I try to find are all centered around transforming the workplace. And I want it to be evergreen content that can live on. Has
the listeners that we've had, I think those have changed. I think we see probably as many HR people listening, but even more leaders and owners and entrepreneurs. What impact do you feel like their feedback has had on just the kinds of content that you're putting out?
I think the thing about podcasting I want people to understand is like, I can see the amount of listens and downloads, and I don't really pay attention to the vanity metrics a whole lot because it's easy to get lost into like, oh, how many downloads did I get on this episode versus this? I don't really care. I want to add value to people, but it's hard to figure out who's listening. I can see where they're listening from. Like I know bulk of our listens and downloads are from the United States, but there's people in China, Russia, Canada, Mexico, Spain, like all sort. It's great. Spain for sure. We had a client come out of there. Shout out to Annika. Just it's so hard to understand what people want to listen to unless they reach out to me. And over the years, I've had people reach out to me on like LinkedIn as a easy way to find me, because I think I put my link in there. Some people email me too. And so just hearing what they care about and what kind of role they have matters to me. There's a lot of HR people, but there's a lot of just regular manager and leader type people that listen, and even contributor level people who probably have desires to become a leader at some point. I think that's what I've seen.
How do you feel like, and I feel like I relate to this because I have been on this since the beginning. And so I've seen you as a host change the way that I mean, there's been some consistency, but I do feel like, I'll just say in the beginning, I think it did feel a little more question answer. And I think as you've grown, obviously in your career here at Xenium and as a leader in general, they feel a lot more like conversations. You add to the conversation with your own input and thoughts in a really meaningful way, I feel like. Do you notice any other ways that you've changed as a host? Well,
I mean, experiences help. I still feel like I do the question answer thing, like a typical like radio show or just any like structured conversation like that would go. I think the difference for me with a lot of people is I don't think people understand like what kind of work I put into this. Like podcasting is a lot of work. I think that's why you see people like put out 7 episodes and then they fall off the face of the earth. There's a lot of work involved, not only just the editing, but the prep. And I pride myself in outworking everybody on this. So with authors, I used to read every book cover to cover, and I still sort of do that now. I just have limited time and I'm doing weekly episodes. So I do skim the books for the most part, but I read enough books and I know the structure enough to know where the high points are. And I really try to find stuff that most podcast hosts are not going to find. Like today, I interviewed a gentleman named Robert Glazer, and he's written like 7 books and does a ton of podcasting. I think he's been on like Wall Street Journal bestseller list and all this stuff. And at the end of the interview, he's like, wow, you really did your homework. And for people like him who probably go on a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of people going through the motions. And I do not want to do that because I don't want to fall trap of like a boring, not well thought out podcast. I want to make sure that we're finding the nuances in the material that most guests or most hosts are not going to go and find. And so that's really how I've grown, is just like seeing the effort that I'm putting in and knowing that I'm not getting like bored of it. I really enjoy it. But like I said, the experiences matter. Like as I've grown in my career and then consuming all that knowledge and just going through it, I've gotten way more comfortable doing it.
Yeah. I feel like you have a way of helping whoever you're talking to say something meaningful. So however it is that you're like crafting your questions, I always walk away thinking, wow, like that, I actually had something to say. And sometimes when I go into it, I'll be honest, I'm like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I don't know what I have to add to this.
Start of the question, right? It's and I think it's what you have to do as a host, is you have to provide the space for somebody to unlock what they have inside them, but it really takes the right question. It's funny because like, and even think about how I prep. I'm like, there's been times where I'm like, I don't know if I could do this. Like I'm either nervous or I don't feel like this is going to go well, but something, when I hit that record button, something about me changes. And this stems back to my baseball years too. Like I remember my coaches back this is high school baseball. I was an all league pitcher 3 years in a row. And I remember my coaches, like the first time I took the mound, they were like, you're a decent practice player. Like you're fine. You don't stand out or anything. But for whatever reason, when you get in the game and you're on the mound, you just totally take control and you have the best poise I've ever seen.
Yeah. When it matters.
That's what makes you different. And I feel like the same with podcasting, and other parts of my job too. It's like when you're in the game,
Mm-hmm.
if you can laser focus and get in your element, like that's what it's all about. And that's how I feel like podcasting's been for me.
Yeah. You can tell, I think, people that are on the show that are a participant and a guest, and then also I think listeners too.
Yeah. I mean, like I feel like I've grown over the years in this space, but talk about you. I mean, your career is completely changed. I mean, you were, I think, an HR representative, producing handbooks. And that's probably why I chose that first topic. Was like, oh, this is a topic Lacey could talk about like all day, is like, how do you structure an employee handbook? And now you are on our senior leadership team. You're supporting so many clients with the craziest of situations. I mean, I could not step in your shoes. You are somebody who can talk the theory of HR and leadership, but you know how to put it into practice and actually help people through. Like, talk about your journey as well.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. I do feel like I've had so much opportunity here. I started, when you think about the Stoller Group, I actually started on the Express side of things, and I was doing recruiting and sending people out to jobs, super rewarding work. And then I got to dabble a little bit in sales when we had the recession in 08, 09. That was challenging, but I'm up for a challenge. So I'm like, okay, bring it on. Let's see how I do in this really difficult economy. And I don't even think I really understood what a recession was. I was just like, I have all these people that need jobs. I'm going to go find them. Jobs. So an opportunity came up here at Xenium in the middle of 09. And I was like, you know what? I think I don't know a whole lot about HR. I think I thought I was doing HR, honestly, when I was at Express, and took that opportunity and kind of worked my way up the ladder, if you will, and was a BP business partner for a long time, have great relationships with clients. I love the clients. I love thinking about how do we put them at the center of all the decisions that we make. I care about their outcomes, sometimes too much. I mean, honestly, like lose sleep over things that are tough for them. Tears with clients sometimes, because it is hard. It is the work that we do pulls at your heart. And so I feel like I lead with that. And then I've had opportunities to lead too. So, and now getting to dabble in this client success role, where really I feel like I get to like do what I was born to do. I don't feel like everybody has that opportunity, but I care so much about the clients, and I care so much about Xenium and our team, that I kind of get to bring the magic of all of that together and find solutions and products and outcomes for clients that are really meaningful. And I still am doing HR. I still have a handful of clients that I'm still technically their HR business partner. And that's really fun too. I want to stay relevant. I don't ever want to not be in the game.
Yeah.
Similar probably for you. You like getting into the weeds of the marketing stuff. So I feel like that makes me a better leader. I feel like it makes me relatable. And I think it helps me understand the client experience. So when I'm thinking about like programmatic things that we're doing, I know how it would feel for an employee to have to implement something like that, because I'm doing it. So I feel really good about my career here, and I cannot imagine working anywhere else.
Yeah, same. Well, and I did an episode on this, but I have a side hustle too. Like I do marketing and consulting on the side. Xenium knows about it, and I've done it for like 11 years. And so that, like, just being able to do that and work in different industries gives me enough that I'm like, I love my work at Xenium because I've got this podcast and love our team and the relationships I've built. And then I've got this other thing too. And it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And I'm like, I'm just so blessed and lucky to do this. I wanted to ask you though, we started the podcast in 2012, and the landscape was different. The way we talked about HR was different then. And you fast forward to today, what, from your point of view, because you are a practitioner, you're in it, what's changed about HR and leadership as a whole?
I think employers are more savvy. I think expectations from employees are much higher. I think the things that we did that were tactical still matter. So you need an employee handbook. You probably should have job descriptions. The basic stuff is still important, but I think technology has changed the expectations. AI is changing things. At the end of the day, I think it's still about people. I think it's still how do you meet the needs of a changing dynamic organization with at least 3, sometimes 4 generations in the workplace. And so how do you navigate that with the pressures of the economy and many employers who have a focus on DEI that is really important, and it's important to Xenium too. You and I are both on our DEI committee here. So I just feel like expectations have increased. Yep. And so employers have had to respond to that. And honestly, that's made it tough, I think, for HR folks, because not only do you have to be like in the weeds and tactical and just building practical programs for your company, you also have to be thinking about that strategy. And so I feel like I got the foundation doing some of that stuff that was a little more basic, and have gotten to dabble in that strategy over time that has made me feel a lot more confident when I'm talking about those changes. You know,
you asked me earlier about like the listeners and how that's shaped the podcast in general. And I often wonder if it's a product of what I'm interested in too. Like it, you know, I get a lot of pitches every single day for topics. Like I probably get, no joke, like 10 to 15 emails from either authors directly or people on their behalf, PR companies. They're pitching their book or whatever topic. And I'll scan and look at topics that are interesting to me. And that's what I'm wondering. I'm like, has the way I've thought about HR and leadership changed over the years?
Yeah.
Or do you know what I mean? It's like, am I shaping the stuff that I put on the podcast, or is there an evolution of the expectations of people have changed, and that's just like where because a lot of topics around psychological safety and listening to your employees and well-being, and like I don't think we were talking about in 2012 at all.
No, I don't think so. I think there was not a headspace for that. Yeah. So I think it's probably a little bit of both. And you're also an employee, and so you have your own needs, and so I think maybe that influences what you want to talk about. I think about, okay, when we're doing the 1,000 episode podcast, like what plans do you have? What do you see for the future of Transform Your Workplace?
That's so hard. I mean, that'd be another like 7 years if I'm at the same pace. It's so hard to imagine. I imagine I'll be talking a lot about, because I'm already starting to talk about it a lot, is like there's so much tech happening right now in our personal lives and at work. And I think the tech in our personal lives is what's pushing the expectations to change as an employer as well. It's like, okay, we can one-click buy on Amazon. So now we've got a one-click open enrollment, or one-click, apply now, stuff like that. So I think our challenge as employers, as HR managers, as leaders is going to be, how do we make sure we thoughtfully add technology to our workplaces without reducing the human connection? And that is going to be the biggest challenge that we need to solve over the next few years. I imagine we'll be talking about that at episode number 1000.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe robots or something. I feel like the tech is
how do we get our robots to interact in a thoughtful way,
a more
with
human
each other?
way? Yeah.
It's hard to imagine where we're going. I mean, like you talked about AI a little bit. I use it every single day for various things in my both personal life and work. In fact, tomorrow we're doing an HR offsite for your team, and I'm doing an AI talk. I got an hour, and I'm going to teach people the basics and do some exercises and stuff like that. And I'm excited. And it's just crazy that we sit here in 2024 talking about artificial intelligence, and it's happened so fast. And the progression in 2 years has been insanity from my point of view. And I can't even imagine what the next 2 years will look like.
I know. Me too.
It's kind of scary.
I think it'll be better. I think we'll be able to focus on things that are more meaningful to get rid of some of that routine, and honestly, the stuff that doesn't fill people up. I hope that we can automate that. I think jobs are going to be more fun. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I really hope so, because like I said, when you add technology or artificial intelligence, what you're hoping to achieve is that you could obviously do more with less, but you get rid of the mundane, repetitive things that a machine can do. And then that frees you up to do the most important stuff, which
Yeah.
usually has something to do with innovation, creativity, but ultimately the human connection part. Like we're going to have more service oriented jobs than ever because we got rid of the repetitive stuff and now humans can just interact with humans.
Totally.
That's why I love bringing these topics to the podcast about how do we connect better as people? Like, how do we structure a one-on-one? What are some good coaching questions to ask? Those are all things meant to, how do we unlock the best versions of ourselves and our people? And that's the most important work.
Yeah. I think when you can do that, your organization will be unstoppable. Like the leaders that have that ability to connect with people in that way, I think are the most successful. So, okay. So if you were going to give yourself advice back in the day when you were first starting this out, like what would you say to your younger self or to somebody who's just starting out and wants to kick off a podcast?
I probably wouldn't give myself any advice because things worked out pretty well right now. I think the curiosity of me, like trying to figure it out, is what drove me. And then just the interest in the topics and just the way in which I got to learn. And then hopefully the listeners learn along with me. That was kind of a key moment. But I have had people approach me and say like, what's your process? And in fact, I think I did that a couple months ago with somebody I know pretty well. And they wanted to start a podcast about the meaning behind a name. And she had asked me about like, what kind of tech do I need to have? What's some advice? And the advice I would tell you is that you're starting with zero audience other than the people you might be connected with, but the chances of them like listening to a full episode, let's say listening to 2 full episodes, like they might listen to your first one and just like to support you and maybe share or like it, but you're really starting with a zero audience. And so patience is key. Like I said, people will give up after probably 6 to 8 episodes. I think the data research shows that. But for me, it took, I want to say 2 to 3 years before there was meaningful downloads.
Yeah.
So we have like 1.2 million downloads as a show total. That took a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't until 2014 or 15 that we really started spiking in terms of downloads. And then you build that subscriber base or people that are following regularly, and then it just kind of compounds from there. So it's like your retirement fund, right? You don't want to look at it. You just want to set it and forget about it, but also contribute to it on a regular basis. Podcasting and content marketing is kind of the same way. It's like you really are not going to see, unless you go viral like instantly, which probably never happens. I'm sure a lot of people who go viral, they had built content forever before that ever happened. So I think that's what I'd say is like, be patient. If you really wanted to talk tech with me, if anybody's listening, want to start a podcast, I'll give you the shortcuts on that stuff. Cause don't waste your time on like, what's the right microphone? What's the right software? Like, I'll just tell you the stuff you need and then just be on your way. Cause creating the content's the most important part.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. I love that you maybe wouldn't give yourself advice. Cause I do think it worked out. It's slow going at first, but I do think you should all feel really proud of the product that we have now.
I appreciate you.
I think
I couldn't have done this without you, Lacey. Like without you taking a chance, I don't know how I would have done this. And the fact that you were a regular guest too, like you and I were BFFs. Like we were like, I knew you would do this with me. And then you were a regular guest that helped fill the space that I couldn't get other people. Like some people were nervous, didn't want to do it, no interest. Like, what's a podcast? And so you took a chance and you kept this thing going. I mean, this the success of 500 episodes belongs to you.
Oh gosh.
It's just as much as me.
Yeah. I'm proud of it. I feel like it's something really, really meaningful that is making a difference. And that's what I'm all about. So I'm glad.
We're going to end this episode with some personal stuff. I want to do some rapid fire questions. I'd never, ever do this, but I think because we have the longevity of this, I think it'd be kind of fun for listeners to get to know us a little bit better. Yeah. And these are stupid questions too. This is why I don't normally do this, but so I'm going to ask you a question and then I'll answer it as well. So I'm going to answer them as well. Okay. What is your go-to karaoke song?
I don't really do karaoke. I'm not.
We karaoke'd one time.
We did the Florida Georgia line. I remember that. I don't know. I think it would maybe be No Scrubs, TLC.
That's awesome. That's a good one. Hey, that third verse of Lisa Left Eye Lopez was a very hard verse to rap. So good luck with that. I have like two go-tos. I am a big Eminem fan, so Just Lose It is a easy-ish karaoke song that's kind of fun to do. So I'll do that. And then I like a very big genre of music. But I also often do this Green Day song called Boulevard of Broken Dreams. It's like such a sappy whatever song, but it's it's an easy karaoke one, and I feel like I have a little bit of range, or I used to have some range to my voice that I get to unlock with that song. So
there you go.
What is one word that best describes you, either self-proclaimed or by other people?
Passionate.
Yeah, I like that.
Or enthusiastic.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. For me, authentic.
Yeah.
I think like what you see is what you get with me.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty vulnerable, and I'm open with people. So I think that's what describes me.
Mm-hmm.
What's a random fact that most people do not know about you?
I don't know. What do people not know about me? Well, maybe our listeners wouldn't know that I was valedictorian of my 8th grade
Smarty pants.
and high school. So, but don't ask me about college statistics.
Ooh, yeah.
I may or may not have gotten a C in that.
I may have skipped a bunch of classes my first term, and it had a rude awakening. Like, this is not like high school.
Yeah, you got to go to class.
Random fact about me, I have never been out of the country.
Okay.
Canada, Mexico, any other country, I've never been. Although I will say, I just went on a cruise and I went to the Bahamas. So I don't know if that really counts.
That counts. That's another country. Okay. You don't get to use that fact anymore. That 100% counts.
What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done in your life?
I don't know. I feel like I'm not that adventurous of a person. I did sign up to go skydiving one time with some friends, and then they bailed. So I didn't do it. Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of like steady Eddie. Like I like my like consistency. I ride dirt bikes. Maybe that's a random fact. Yeah. So like bought a dirt bike and learned how to ride a 125. So
I, like you, I'm not adventurous at all. I'm pretty risk averse, and just like, I'm okay with staying at home and reading a book or watching TV or whatever it is. I live on a golf course, so I like to golf, or I used to before I had kids. Kids will
they get in the way,
take
man.
up a lot of my time. But adventure, I think the thing that comes to mind is whitewater rafting. I did that
I love that.
on a bachelor party trip one time, probably hungover or something, and that was rude awakening. Wow. Yeah. But luckily, it's guided, so
on the
it's safe. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that. I actually fell out
in Oregon.
Yeah, I fell out of the raft. I've gone a lot, but on Boxcar, which I think is a class 4 rapid, fell out and had to like swim, and it was pretty scary. But
yeah, hey, look at us, we're adventurous.
Yeah, look at us. Yeah.
If you weren't doing HR, what would you be doing?
I would be a midwife. Like, for
that.
Sure. Like either that or a therapist, which was what I was going to do with my psych degree, but probably a midwife. What about
this
you?
is a tough question for me because I love what I do now. And this is totally accidental, by the way. Like I'm a vice president of marketing and product and a host of a podcast, totally accidental. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people in their careers. But what I originally wanted to do outside of being a professional baseball player, or that's what I really wanted to do, wasn't good enough. I originally went to school to become a teacher, and I wanted to become a baseball coach. So I quickly pivoted when I realized there's a lot of politics and red tape and just can't do what you want to do. And so I kind of got frustrated by that. So I changed to business instead.
You could still coach. You could coach rec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I know. I coached my son's basketball team. Tried to coach baseball. He gave up on that, which broke my heart, but it's okay. Yeah. It's every kid's unique and individual, and I'm not going to push my kids into anything that they don't love. So.
Totally.
Okay, this is a random question here. If you could live in any decade, past, future, which one would it be?
I mean, I like the close of the 90s. So maybe that. But I also love the Beatles and the music of the 60s. So like maybe I would do that. I don't know. I like where I'm at. I like being in the decade I'm in.
Good. That's the right answer. Is the present is the best because you can make it what you want to make it. Yeah. I will say this: I'm a futurist, and I really want to glimpse into what the next like 30 years is going to be. Partly because of just where technology and society is going, but I really want to see if my kids have kids.
Yeah,
and I want to see my grandkids.
Okay,
if I have them.
I like that. I could get on. I could get on board with that. I just like the 90s jeans, like, but they're back now. Yeah. So if I can. Rock that now and still be in 2024.
There's this like amazing Instagram account called like, I can't even remember. I'll try to find it, but it's like that 90s kids or something like that. And it's just all this nostalgic stuff.
Oh yeah. The 90s.
Like Pizza Hut and Surge Soda and all this just random stuff from the 90s.
Sunny D. Yeah.
Sunny D. Ew, gross. Well, Lace, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for celebrating the 500th episode. Still crazy to think about. And I appreciate you for doing episode number 1 and so many in between with me. Yeah. You have been one of my best friends over these years, and I am so thankful to have you by my side and to celebrate this milestone. So thank you.
Same. Thanks for having me on then and now and all the in between.
All right. Thanks for listening to today's special 500th episode. Tune in next time.